slowly trickle in, but they'll have to catch up. So, before we get into the sort of the nitty-gritty of the physiology of the musculoskeletal system, neural system, what we want to look at, I suppose, is at the output, which is your basic fatigue. So we're going to really spend just 10 minutes or so to begin with, going through a bit of the theory of it, not a huge amount, and then we're going to really measure your somatotypes in a couple of different ways of doing it.
No one mind us.
Sorry, I'm late. And we'll see it, then we'll relate it back to your physical sort of sports that you play, the things that you do, and we'll see whether there's any patterns. And hopefully by that we'll determine whether actually there is a role to play for somatotyping in sporting analysis and those kinds of applications. Certainly when you go back to the 1960s, late 50s, countries such as East Germany, some of you will remember East Germany, but some of us will, East Germany, Soviet Union, actually used to use somatotypes as a way of profiling kids into, well, particularly sporting applications. So they would take kids at 10, and they would say, all right, there's a class of 100 kids there, tall one's going to stand over there, one's a little muscle over there, fat one's over there, or whatever, and they would say, right, you are tall, so you're probably going to be good sprinters and high jumpers or whatever, so you will train in that way. You are short or whatever, so you're going to be gymnasts or whatever, and you're going to be
props.
Yeah. Exactly. If that's the case. And they certainly started doing that. And what they would do is by the masses, by the numbers, they would say we'll start with 100 in that group and 100 in that group. And as they evolved over a period of time, then as they grew, then they wouldn't be quite so tall, so they would then be moved off or whatever. And they would start profiling really young, and they did that. And then obviously the secondary stuff that started coming through in the 70s and 80s is then the use of drugs and things to enhance those performances. But that's where they started. They categorised the importance of using physique as a way of profiling in order to determine potential for good sports was so important to those regimes that they actually selectively chose people at those ages. And we do the same. Just, I mean, you're joking about prop. But in fairness, what you will do, the teacher will say, well, you're not very tall and you're quite muscle or heavy. You go as a prop to start with. And you grow into that. You're lean and agile, so you go on the wing or whatever. And we do start doing that early on. You see under 10s, under 12s in rugby in particular. But that has gone on. And so there is some efficacy in that. How much, again, is up to you. Some people use it more than others. Your choice as you go through this will be to determine whether it applies to you or not. So one of the things that then came through, when they started seeing that was occurring, was very much to say, all right, how do we classify? And there are lots of different ways. We can have things like, well, obviously somatotype, any other ways you can think of that we might categorise people in body physique.
BMI?
BMI, yeah, would be another one. Where we basically say, this is your health rating. If your BMI is over this value, then you've got these health characteristics, potentially. Whether you do or not is very much open to debate, but that's one of the things that we do. And there are other ones that if you look through. But the most common one used generally is this Heath Carter, developed in 1967, and then it's evolved slightly since then. But they determined that there were these 3 scale ratings, basically ectomorphy, which was leanness, endomorphy, which was fatness, and mesomorphy, which was muscle mass and lean tissue. I do mine, and I score 0.5 on the old ectomorph rating. So again, there are different characteristics, and that's, you've got to see, there's no ectomorph in me. I'm a mixture of endo and mesomorph. So such is life. And I can't particularly change it. I'm never going to grow taller, and things like that. So what do they look like? Well, again, we can see it in our spot. I'll come back to that one in a second. But if we look at our sporting applications, so this is black and white because this was me in the 1970s. Yeah, right. And then we have these mesomorphic kind of things, the ectomorph, these are high jumpers in one of the Olympics. And then our boy over here is obviously a heavyweight, a super heavyweight boxer. And so these are the defined characteristics that we're looking at. The question becomes, is that enough? Is it specific enough? Here, this guy is on the endomorph rating 7. These are 7 on the mesomorph and 7 on the ectomorph. It's that combination. And what we're going to do, and you're going to do in a bit, is plot your place on these to see where you are in those. It doesn't matter where you are what you are. It's just a matter of, can we actually develop patterns? Do we find all table tennis players are all around this 2, 3, 5 rating? And if they are, if we can establish those patterns, then we can say, well actually, if all the best people are that rating, then we have a potential to say, well really, that would be quite a good aspiration. So we'd actually want to have, if someone was then 2, 3, 5, and then we measured someone's body composition and it was quite high, it was a 5, 2, 5 or whatever, then we could actually say, well, we need to lose weight because it's inhibiting performance. And that's what we do, that's fitness testing really. That's what we do in everything. We measure your strength and you say, is that good or bad? This is just looking at the overall physique rather than strength per se. But what we wanted to do then is sort of then subdivide it. So we have these subdivisions, which most of us will fall into, this endomesomorph, which is sort of where I am, I'm in there. But we have tall ectomesomorph and endoectomorphs, and those categorizations. The question becomes is, again, as I say, is how useful are these? That's what we're going to have a look at. So how might it be used? Certainly, as I said right at the beginning, we've got these things for talent spotting. And that's what you'll look at. You'll do it yourself. You'll actually look at people and make an overt or a subjective assessment of what you think that person might be. Oh, he'll be a good prop, he'll be a good second row, he'll be a good weightlifter, he'll be a good gymnast, or whatever. And you certainly look at that for that profiling. You do it, a coach does it, you will do it yourself. It also allows us then to look at objectives. We look at, I think I've got a picture here, might be the next one, not that one, this one. So this is Adam Jones. I use Adam Jones because I used to teach it. But Adam Jones, when he first started rugby, and then when he went to move to, when he started playing for Wales more, then he actually lost a lot of weight, leaned out, etc. Because the nature of the physique. Now in doing that, what he's actually found is there was a period of time in international rugby where Adam Jones was only coming on as an impact player, or playing the first 40, 60 minutes of a game. And obviously he realised, and his coaches realised, that very much that he needed to slim down. Didn't lose any strength or anything, that's the role of a fitness advisor, to make sure you don't have the negative impacts of training when you want to improve the other aspects. So he lost a lot of weight, was a lot more dynamic, and then played, I think it was on 3 lines tours and all the rest of it. So changing the physique is often very useful. So it gives us an idea of things that we're changing. Certainly participant selection. As I say with Adam there, he was very much viewed in a very different way. He wasn't any worse a rugby player. He wasn't actually, he was still as strong, but they thought he's overweight, he can't last. And certainly when I've worked in professional sport, then looking at, the coaches will say, well, it looks a bit overweight, is he alright to play, or are there issues there? And certainly people are actually being selected because of how they look, how their image is. And that then comes on to another side of it, for in a maybe a health more perspective, is actually say how you feel. I suppose the question is, which of these three people, I know you girls wouldn't want to look like any of them, but boys or men, which would you want to look like? Which would you happiest be? So some of you may be down here. Some of you, probably most of you would be in there. And I would be surprised if there were many that was your aspiration. But these are all idle, is it? Excellent. You know, it doesn't mean that they're strong, but there's a perception there. Women tend to be, actually, men tend to be in here, women tend to be somewhere in that range. Just because of stereotyping, body image, media, and those kinds of things. So again, we can look at that. And that's what you see. You see the shaving adverts on television, then you never see someone like that shaving. It's always like this. And those kind of stereotypes. That's something you talk about more in the social side. We don't really get into that now. But certainly these are key, and we've got to establish whether there is efficacy or worth in looking at that kind of training. And again, in this case, it's strength training. I wouldn't certainly recommend strength training, but it wouldn't be bad strength training, but there's other things that it should be doing. When we then start to look at that, then we do tend to find that the more training people get, and certainly at the higher performance levels, then we do start to develop a pattern of responses. At amateur level, it tends to be based on skill. I know certainly I played football at a reasonable level, and then when I moved to Cardiff I played in the parks, and some of the best players were really unfit and not very sort of mesomorph looking, shall we say, but they were actually very good footballers. But because they were playing those skillful at a level, they got away with it. But at the higher levels, it's not necessarily the case, and we start to evidence those patterns. So again, what we might be beginning to say is that at the higher levels, then there are certain characteristics of people that are beginning to come through. How we change that is your training program and all the rest. So I suppose, let's just go through these. A rugby prop. What do we want a rugby prop to be? We don't really want it to be fat.
Defined.
Defined. Yeah. We want it to be very strong, have a lot of muscle. We actually would like a rugby prop, because their main focus of the game is power, explosive power, to be really high up here. But we also need a bit of weight, we need that inertia. So when we do that, in the physical characters we want them there, but in order to get the mass, if you like, then we tend to move down towards the endomorph region. So we'd be sort of somewhere in there. That's what we would want. That's the change. Adam Jones started here and ended up here in losing that weight. What about basketball playing?
Extreme ectomorph.
Yeah. Maybe not so much extreme, because again, there is a bit of contact and a bit of argy-bargy there, we want some mass, but certainly down towards this ectomorph rating, we want them to be in this region. In sports, we're always going to want the muscle mass particularly, but we want the height.
It depends, really.
Sorry?
Depends, basketball.
Depends. Yeah, but generally, if we were looking at, say, the NBA, and we characterised all of those players, probably 95% would be over 6 foot, 80% would be over 6'6", and probably 20% would be over 7 foot. Whatever, I'm making this up, but it'd be that kind of value. You're not going to get a 5'2" professional basketball player. You know, you might get someone under 6 foot, but again, it'll be a specific role. But generally, it's the case we're more likely to be down here. There are always going to be exceptions to the rule. There are always going to be people who are odd, but yet highly specific. Distance runner?
Extreme ectomorph?
Yeah, I think you're right. They're going to be in this. We certainly don't want the body weight of them, and we don't need muscle mass because we've got to carry that around. So even though a basketball player is generally here, we'll actually get the same kind of position for a distance run. The difference will be, proportionately, the basketball player will be 6'6", and relatively thin, whereas the runner might be 5'8", 5'9", and relatively thin. So certainly they would have probably the same physique, but actually the absolute values would be different. Gymnast, it's up there. Yeah, I mean they need to be very, very powerful, but generally gymnasts are quite small. You normally get gymnasts sort of between about 5'4" and 5'10" or something like that, because the lever length is hard. If you're doing crucifix and you're out there, you've got long levers, it's really hard to hold that. You need a lot more muscle for big people. So gymnasts are relatively small, but they are mesomorph, very muscle in nature. Tennis player? Yeah. Again, we've got a tennis player here, we've got in between ecto and mesomorph. A lot of muscle, lots of sprinting, lots of running around, lots of power with the upper body, playing games for 2 to 3 hours. So again, we don't want to have lots of weight to carry around, because that's just going to slow me down, it's going to reduce the speed, it's going to make me tired, etc. So again, we're looking at these relationships between functionality of what's required in the sport and the physique that we develop. The question then becomes, what actually comes first? Do we actually develop the physique in order to become a good tennis player, or do we become a good tennis player and then by playing tennis develop the physique? Again, that's unsure. If you go back to your East Germans, and what they did was develop the physique and said, now go try and be a good tennis player. And if you're no good at tennis, then we'll kick you out and you can go in the coal mines or whatever. But that's what the way they worked it. Whereas we in this country actually tend to develop, people have an interest, you have an interest in the sport you want, and then you go to a personal trainer or a coach or whatever, and they develop the physique to improve your performance in their quarters. The question is, I suppose, how strong is that relationship? How important is that physique? And in some cases it's very important, and others it's not so important. And again, we've got here, we've got a whole range, Usain Bolt and there. We've got this range. These are all high performance athletes. These are all people who are world champions or at the highest level, and they are very different. This is Isner and Djokovic, and he's 6'1" and he's about 6'8" or something like that. They're still good, and they are different. Big boy here. For sumo you need it. It's that weight, etc., etc. So there are these characteristics and these defined. And if I put a load of athletes in front of you, you didn't know what they played, you'd have a fairly good guess at what kind of sport they play. So the question is, how do we measure it? How do we go from there? And that's really the core of what we're going to do over the next hour and a half or so. What we need to do is measure these values: height, weight, skin fold, tricep thickness, skin fold, subscapular, suprailiac, mid-calf, humerus epicondyle width, femur condyle width, flexed arm, tensed arm, with a tensed arm and tensed calf. So what does that mean? Volunteer, Michael, if you come out, you've got the vertical is the least clothes on, so it's easiest to show. So we have height, weight, standing over two. I'm not going to go through those, you can do those yourself, that's easy enough. Tricep fold, skin fold, tricep skin fold, you can just turn and face that way. You'll do this with Geraint in more detail. I'm just showing you now, and we'll do it fairly quickly. Normally what you do with your tricep is measure from the top here to the elbow, go halfway and take a measure in there. We use these are fairly straightforward, these basic ones. And what we want to do is measure the skin fold thickness halfway between the two. Don't be relaxed, so relax your arm, let it flop. Otherwise I'm going to take muscle. So what I'm going to do is I go in there, I push in until I feel the muscle, pinch away, and I take the skin fold there. And I measure off here 20 millimeters. Okay, so that's my tricep. Bicep, we can turn around. Just take there, halfway between the auxiliary fold here and there, in here, exactly the same. Pinch in here. That gives me a value. Okay, and then suprailiac. So suprailiac is in here. If you don't mind just raising your t-shirt slightly. It's not all the way down here, it's up here. Thumb in, press there, hit the measure, and there. If you're doing it on a mixed gender, you can just take it over the t-shirt and then remove that. So I could take it there and just take that off if you don't want to do that. Now, when you do this with Garrett, you measure body composition, body fat levels. Here, we just want the values. We're not going to go down that route. So that's there. That's those. Mid-calf. So what we're looking at on here is measuring thickness around his calf. So we do that. We measure the fattest area. We'll take that value in centimetres there. On the arm, what we want to do is flex to 90 degrees. And then shows your guns there. So you need to do tenths there. And we take the measure. Again, we've got it here. You can do that, thanks. And then the condyle width. Someone's stolen all my condyle measures, but we can use these. So what we're actually looking at is find the two bony bits, the epicondyles, which are these two bones there, on here, on him, and then you can measure that, put that on him there and measure. Here, it's quite big. We've got here what we might need to do. I don't think I'll get around. Someone, as I say, normally have condyle measures, but someone's taken them. So we need to then measure in there. We can use that. There's another technique we can lose if these won't fit on people. Thanks. So you take those measures, and you've got on your handouts all of these, how to do these. And there are two ways of doing it. One is to use this equation. So this is your endomorph rating. This is a bit more mathematical. So you actually add up the skip folds of triceps in here, and you get a value, so 50 for example. Multiply that by 170 divided by height, that gives you a value, x.
No, sorry, carry on, I'll ask afterwards.
Yeah, and then by the time you do all that, then you put that into this equation here, and that will give you a number which will be 1 to 7 generally, maybe over if you're really extreme in one area, and that'll give you an endomorph rating. Okay, so that's how you do it for endomorph by calculation. Mesomorph, what you do is your height, your humeral epicondyle and your femur condyle. Your max girth corrected. So actually what you do is you take your girth and you take out the skin fold millimetres away from it. And then you do the same with your max flex. You get them, you put it into that equation, and it gives you a reading. Well, I'll help you through these if it's an issue. There. Ectomorph is actually height, weight, so it's your ponderal index, height divided by cube root of weight, which is in there, and then it gives you the value, again you work it out there. So you get these three values that endomorph. And then what you can do is plot it on these, and there's one of those in there, it's a bit blurry, but that's 3, 4, 5, so if you end up with your ectomorph 3, mesomorph 4 and endomorph 5, then you circle that and that's where you are. And you plot that, you colour that in, and that's, there you go, and it's 3, 4, 5, swimmies or whatever. And that's it. And what we should be able to do is do your own, well you can work in pairs here to begin with to do it, and then once you've plotted all those, then you should be able to see the difference between the two. And then on one of the ones on the table you can plot it, not for your name, we're not interested in where individuals are, but what your main sport is. And it could be ranging from I don't play sport, or I just weight train, or through to I play table tennis or whatever it is. And we can plot those on a more simple one. And that will give us that value in there. So, what you've got in your handout, sorry, have you got any spare handouts?
Yeah, they do.
So the other way of doing it is using these graphs here. Same measures, so there's no different measures. So what you do is you do the same, add triceps, multiply by 178, divide by height in centimetres, you get a value. What you do is go to this top table here, on here, and if that value came out as 46 or whatever, I go to 46, which is the closest, between 14.8 and 46, and my endomorphic rating is 4.5. And that's my value, yeah? You do the same, just follow the maths for the mesomorph and the ectomorph. And then you get the values there, and then you can plot them. So by the end of the session, what you should have individually plotted on this next one here is your value using the table form and your value using the calculation. Because one of the things we want to see is, are they actually giving the same thing? Because if they're not, then it's important which one we actually use. Yeah? So we can plot those down, and then we can see, do you relate to any particular sport and whatever. Yeah? So that's your question.
Well, there's two.
Yeah.
So, can I have an example of an endo-ectomorph, like what sport that would be?
An endo-ectomorph. Endo-ectomorph, you might well find, is you could actually have someone, a basketball player, could be in that range, someone like, what's his name?
LeBron James.
Someone like Larry Bird would have been in that category. If you look at Larry Bird, he's quite stocky, but very tall.
And then the other one was, how do you measure subscapular?
Was that on there?
Yeah.
Oh, right, my apologies.
Cover it, so.
Sorry, jump over. If it was on there, my apologies. Subscapular. Right, in this case, what we do is, do you mind taking your top off for a second? That'd be easier to show. So in this case, what we do with subscapular is, we find the scapula, we come down to the point, so just pull your arm back so I can feel your scapula, get to the point, the apex of the scapula, put your, I normally do it from the side, so I've got my apex in there, finger at the bottom, about an inch away, push, and measure in there. Yeah, that's all we do next.
Don't tense.
Again, you can do it over the top, that's no issue, but just take away this, the thickness of the t-shirt.
Tense anymore, mate.
You know, I've done fitness testing in these before all the impedance stuff came out, and I've never had any issues on a one-to-one basis of actually measuring body comp. It's just how you do it. It's a skill you've got to learn, because once you're in teams or you're in a community doing it, you're not going to be able to take a big bioimpedance measure with you. You're not necessarily going to have power. So learning how to use skin calculus is important. The reason is because this kind of measure, body comp, is the most common measure that people are interested in. Most people in health and fitness actually are looking at body composition as the key thing they want to adapt. So learning that skill is key. We're doing it very quickly. You'll come back to it and do lots of it over this year, never mind the following years. So I'll just be going back over with the second years now who are doing it on some older populations. So we'll come back to it a lot. So, all right. So that's the test for the next hour and a half or so, an hour to do it, and then we'll have a chat. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 7.
Yeah.
Doing 7.